So I won't go into much detail about Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3. Please refer to some of my training videos. Sufficient to say that when you are describing your carbon footprint, a bluffer would use the phrases Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3. Scope 1 being those emissions that your business are directly responsible for. Scope 2, effectively electricity usage by your business. And Scope 3, indirect emissions. So those emissions that your business is indirectly responsible for, primarily from suppliers and services provided by other businesses for whom your Scope 3 is their Scope 1 and Scope 2. So let's plow into this. Burning of natural gas. If you have a gas boiler, heat water with gas, any sort of gas. I should say, prior to commencing this, it would be worthwhile gathering your gas bill for the year, your electricity bill for the year, any information about diesel and petrol use within your business. Also, your water bill would be useful. So I'm just going to plow through this. The formatting is basically wherever you see an enter, you need to enter a number. So enter your business gas consumption in kilowatt hours. So you'll get this from your gas bill. So I'm just going to say your average home is about 12,000. So I'm going to say 1,200, or sorry, 120,000. And this uses the conversion factor, so you don't need to enter that. And this comes up with a result of 120,000 kilowatt hours equals 21 tons. Now, I've seen businesses with an awful lot more gas usage, but we'll just stick to that. Burning of diesel in vehicles for business. So let's assume you have two vans, each using about 50 litres a week, 52 weeks. So let's say 5,000 litres a year. So 5 is 25, 2 5 50 times. So 5,000 litres. Burning of petrol in vehicles for business. So let's say you have one car that you run around in, similarly to working out the diesel. Let's say 2,500 litres per year. So 50 litres a week, 50 weeks a year. And again, using government greenhouse gas conversion protocols, that petrol is about 5.8 tons of CO2 equivalent. So I've only used three factors here. The main factor missing would be potentially F gases, LPG, quite a number of other minor factors, but for most businesses that would cover, I'd say, 80% of your Scope 1. So we get 41 tons. Next. So now we're on to Greenhouse Gas Protocol Scope 2 emissions. And these are from electricity. So your electricity bill, any other supplied heat. So that could be if you're on a district heating system, or electric vehicles that are used for business use. And that's actually a new one this year. Main supply electricity, enter your business electricity consumption in kilowatt hours. I'm just going to say 100,000. Not to that. So 100,000 electricity kilograms, 0.2. So 100,000 kilowatt hours is 21 tons Scope 2 for electricity. Electric vehicles charging. Now, this number is entered in kilometers driven. So if you have an electric vehicle that is charged elsewhere, i.e. it's not included in your mains electricity. So if you have an electric charger plugged in at work, it should be included in this consumption number. But if you have electric vehicles that are charged off-site or in people's homes that are used for business, then ideally you should use the actual kilowatt hours. But if you just have the number of kilometers driven, so I'm going to say in a year 7,500 kilometers, which perhaps a bit low, and using again conversion factors from UK government, that's 0.377 tons. Maybe just add a 17, make it look a bit more chunky if you have two cars. So total greenhouse gas emissions from your business, scope 2, then become 22 tons. So predominantly your scope 2 is your carbon emissions from the electricity that you use at work. Very simple. Enter total. Next. So now we're into scope 3 emissions. Again, these are emissions your business are indirectly responsible for. So the first number we have is again electricity, but it's a locked field. So that is the number that you entered in scope 2 for electricity. These emissions are the responsibility of National Grid and your local distribution company. So electricity is effectively lost between the generator and your business, and that's what that figure is. So it's lost in resistive transmission losses, technical, but considering the other one was 22, about maybe 10% less. Mains water in and out of your business. So surprising for some, but water has a carbon impact. So a typical house, I think, maybe uses 1,000 cubic meters a year. Let's say a business uses 2,500. So again, check from your water bill. I'm making here big assumption that the water that goes in goes out, which is how most water is billed. Do check your water bill because it may not be applicable for some businesses. Depends how you use water. And so mains water in kilograms is 0.149 per cube. Mains water out, so that gives, mains water in emission of 0.373, simply 2500 multiplied by that. Wastewater is 0.272, so wastewater has almost double the carbon impact as clean water in, simply because wastewater needs to be treated more. And wastewater out, 0.68 tons. I've added short haul flights within Europe, so enter the total kilometers there and back again. So if you're undertaking short haul business travel, most these days I guess most business travel is in economy, but it's a slightly higher rate for business class. Let's assume 5,000 kilometers, which probably a couple of flights, London, Berlin or something like that. So this is the distance between the airports, air travel short haul, and 5,000 kilometers is 0.7. I might increase that a bit. Let's say there's a lot of flying. So 15,000 kilometers, 2.65 tons CO2. So that gives us a total greenhouse gas emissions, scope 3, 5.1 for those items. Now, a significant part of scope 3 is your suppliers, and very difficult to determine. You need to start asking your suppliers what their carbon footprint is, but just to get a guesstimate, what I've done is I've taken the figure, the total carbon footprint that we've calculated so far at 68, and I've put a slider in here to estimate suppliers. And what a rule of thumb, very vague, the percentage of turnover associated with goods and services that we haven't already included. So for example, if you're a haulage company and have very large diesel usage, then you'd probably be at the lower end of the scale. But if you're effectively buying and selling services whereby your turnover is primarily against goods in, so if you're a manufacturer buying in lots of raw materials and then processing them, then chances are you're at slightly higher end of the scale. And what you can see here is the tonnage associated with those suppliers. And if your total tonnage so far that we've calculated is 68, suppliers could easily be half of your carbon footprint. So I'm going to set it to half, but do think about the relative ratio of goods and services into your business compared, and the costs of that compared to the figures we've entered so far for electricity, fuel, flights, water, etc. So next, and that's it. So summarizing, greenhouse gas scope 1, total we have 41 tons, 41.35. Electricity, scope 2, we have 22 tons. And scope 3, indirect emissions, we have 73 tons. The vast bulk is suppliers at 68 tons. So carbon footprint summary, grand total 137.33 tons of CO2 equivalent. And again, I have a training video, please refer to understand what tons CO2 equivalent actually is. So if you'd like a copy of this sent to your email, I'll use an example, info@briceenergyservices.com. A copy will be sent to Bryce Energy Services, accept terms and conditions, so that's for GDPR. If you wish data reference, so I'll say example for video and submit. So it takes you to another page on our website. So I'll just drop back to that. I'll just pause and wait for that email to pop in. So this is the email you should receive, and again the summary of the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, your total carbon emissions, and the reference example for video. So that was how the calculator works, fairly straightforward, and I hope you use it fairly quick.